My name is Greg Buie, and I am one of the co-founders of Visions Global Empowerment, which was founded in 2003. And my co-founder, Mira Patmaraja, Dr. Mira Patmaraja, who I know has spoken before, is also, I can see, on the call. So just a quick background to myself. I'm born and raised here, and I'm in California, just south of Los Angeles, not too far from where Mira herself grew up. And I did my undergraduate studies at University of California, San Diego. I studied my master's in London at SOAS. And both for my undergraduate thesis and my graduate thesis, I actually focused on Sri Lanka. And I was planning on going back and doing my PhD to focus on Sri Lanka as well. That's a dream that has not yet been realized, but hopefully will one day. So just to start with some embarrassing photos of myself from a long time ago. I had the opportunity to go to Sri Lanka for the first time in 2004. And I really have to admit, I did not know what I was stepping into. It was a great adventure for me. And the first place I went was to Jaffna. So the picture on the right is actually at the Hindu Board of Education in Jaffna, where I spent 2 weeks on a program called Visions, which Mira had created and was implementing. And it was a youth summer program. And after the 2 weeks in Jaffna, I spent 2 weeks in Trincomalee and just really fell in love with Sri Lanka and ended up going back, wanting to go back. Of course, once the tsunami happened, I actually took time off of college and raised money. And from public schools here in Southern California, both my parents are now retired public school teachers. And we raised some funds and went and basically adopted a village in Hambantota, which is about 30 minutes inland, where a lot of the breadwinners from that community, sadly were lost in the tsunami. And because it was inland, no one was really paying them much attention. And so we started doing education projects there as well. And so this quilt that you see here in the middle was an effort of the public school systems here. As people made donations, they would write messages of hope and encouragement. And then we sewed, I believe it was almost 20,000 squares together and carried this quilt back to Sri Lanka. And ended up for the next 2 years doing mostly education development and some livelihoods development projects with that community. But really my focus has been in the North and the East since then. And Visions is still active there, obviously today as well. So I believe some of you probably know about our organization, so I don't want to go into too much detail here. But Visions, we were started in 2003 by Mira, and I had the opportunity to join her that first year and then really just attach myself to this organization and tried to build it up. And since then, we've grown quite a bit. We've now been able to invest a little over $17 million in education programs, which have impacted over 43,000 lives. We're currently active in 5 countries, which should be Sri Lanka, India, Ethiopia, Nicaragua, and the US. And we're hoping to expand that portfolio in the future. And specifically, we work with youth affected by poverty, conflict, gender discrimination, and disability. As you can see by our gender representation, I am a very poor representation of our organization. It's almost an entirely women-run operation. Most of our staff, we have about 180 staff now in all of the different countries, and it's predominantly female as well. And I think that's something we're really proud of. So today I wanted to just share kind of my insights into being in this world of international development for the last 18 years. It's certainly changed dramatically since I started. And I believe that the landscape of philanthropy has changed very dramatically as well. So obviously I know we're all familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we try to root all of our programs in these goals, in as many of them as possible. So obviously goal number 4 here, quality education, would be our primary objective. But along the way, we can certainly incorporate elements of other objectives. So I do believe that, our global reality has changed a lot. I think we're living in a really trying time, obviously, not just with recent revelations of COVID, but before that as well. I mean, certainly climate change is having a major impact on all sectors of, our economy, our political landscape, our everyday lives. And the more I talk to people in the philanthropic space, the more I hear that we have these massive challenges, these big challenges, and those big challenges require big ideas. And I think that's something, it's a lesson that I've had to learn over the last 2 years in particular, of trying to break the mold of the way I was thinking and to think about things in a larger context. So big ideas require, or big challenges require big ideas, big solutions. And that means dreaming a little bit bigger than we would have. And so one question that was posed to me a while ago was, well, what if you do not have to worry about resources? What if resources were not the problem? What would your programs then look like? What would your projects look like? And that was an interesting question, because so much of what we do is limited by the resources we have available, the financial resources in particular that we have available. So in thinking about, well, what can we do if we didn't have to worry about that? I've been able to have this project in Nicaragua where it's the first time I've been able to think about everything that you would want, everything we've learned over the last 18 years of international development and education work, we can put into practice in this project. The way I see it now is that, a lot of what we were doing before was reacting to these challenges. We're reacting to symptoms of an underfunded, underdeveloped, and unequal system of education that's really failing to maximize the potential of people in the world today. And nothing in our world is going to change without addressing that reality first. It all has to start with education. So when we apply these Band-Aid fixes to problems, we're almost reinforcing the bad system, a broken system. So if we can just reimagine what that future would look like, it can change the way that we do our programming, even considering limitations we have with resources and funding in particular. And I think with regard to education specifically, the same is also true. We, as an organization, we try to fill the gaps of education for those who are who don't have the same opportunities. We are trying to address inequities, basically, trying to bring those who are left out up to a standard so that they can compete in the global economy, so that they can have a meaningful life, and so forth. But we're not changing the landscape of education when we're doing that. We're feeding into that same sort of broken system. And the way that I view education today is that it hasn't really evolved. It hasn't evolved in the last several decades to keep up with the world that we live in today, the challenges that we're facing as a planet. And so education has to evolve as well. And we need to be the ones that are pushing that agenda forward. And that takes bold action. And, again, that's something with this Nicaragua project that we have really been able to do. And now I can imagine it for all the other places we're working as well. So I wanted to just share some statistics, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with a lot of this, but just the distribution of global wealth amongst, the top earners of the world. So today, there are a little less than 3,000 known billionaires. Certainly, I think there are more out there. There are estimated to be more than 56 million millionaires. And those millionaires are getting richer. To be in the top 1% of the US, for example, you need to have more than $10 million now. There are more than 2,000 publicly traded companies with $1 billion in sales annually. There are more than 500 private companies worth $1 billion. And this wealth is highly disproportionately concentrated in the US, but it's also in China, it's in Europe, and it's in other developed economies. And there are, I'm sure you're familiar, which represents now $600 billion worth of commitments from 211 signatories, some of the richest people in the world, agreeing to shed their wealth through philanthropic investments during their lifetime. But those who have signed up represent less than 10% of the total number of known billionaires in the world. So to me, what I'm learning over the last several years and going out there and trying to run this organization and fundraise is that the rich are getting richer, and the big companies are getting bigger. And those are the people who have the ability to change the landscape. Those are people who, even in the way that they are giving the money, they're changing the way that they just distribute it. They want those big ideas. They want big solutions to these global challenges. I've had a lot of conversations in the last year, in particular when we spoke with Google. We spoke with as a group here in California called Anonymous, and they help people who are in this category, or they represent a company in this category, who want these major solutions, and they want to invest in them. They don't want to give the way that they were giving before, which is more of foundation giving. So what everybody has told me is, if you don't put out those ideas, we don't know, and we're not going to be able to invest in them. So don't be shy, and just push yourself to think a little bigger and to ask for a little bit more, and you might be surprised what happens. And I can say for a fact that that's actually happened with us, because we've been able to have this project in Nicaragua. So I wanted to just, before I share a little bit more about the project, I wanted to just share a short video, which will give you an introduction into what we've built.
Hi, I'm Rob Friedman, founder of Vera Angelita. It's been a lifelong dream to give back to society and build a world-class school that focuses on helping deserving young ladies receive a great education that helps them rise from poverty. It helps themselves, they help their family, they ultimately help their communities, and they help the world. Thanks for taking a moment to learn what we're all about. Welcome to Vera Angelita, a school situated in the cloud forest of Matagalpa, Nicaragua. A school set in one of the most beautiful places in the world, set in a wildlife reserve and surrounded by nature.
Escuela Vera Angelita is a school like no other that's focusing on giving the best quality education to the people who need it the most, and in this case, it's young Nicaraguan women. Vera Angelita is the heart of a whole project that's in over 200 acres of land. The heart is obviously the school, the education, and the girls, but there's so many people working on this project to make it come to life, to make this dream come true.
We first came to Nicaragua in 2016, and we just fell in love with this country, with its people, its natural beauty, its deep traditions, and its vibrant culture.
The idea was to create a learning campus where students will be constantly connected to nature, and that connection is reinforced throughout the project. There are wide studies that demonstrate that connection with nature, especially in students, in small children, stimulates cognitive activity and reinforces learning.
The mission of Escuela Vera Angelita is simply to help these young Nicaraguan girls to realize their own aspirations, whatever they may be. We have no particular agenda other than to prepare them to lead meaningful lives, to help break the cycle of poverty for their families and their communities, and to be a change agent for good in our world today. Vera Angelita is a holistic, sustainable development model with education as its anchor. We're not only providing a world-class education for the girls who will attend this school, we are inspiring wider systematic change in the communities around us as well. We are creating jobs and enabling professional development. We are restoring the waterways and the forests around us. We're supporting our local communities through assistance in agriculture and health and community development. This is what sustainable development work should look like.
Being a girl is hard, but being a girl from a low-income community, limitations are countless. When I see these girls, I see my mom. She grew up in a rural community. The houses were made of clay, no running water, no electricity, and she had to walk 2 hours to go to school. And if you go right now, like 60 years later, it's the same situation. We need to do something about this.
Girls here will be able to have a safe environment, a warm bed to sleep in every night, all meals, and the quality education. Escuela Vera Angelita is also a place to be safe, to be a girl, to be a child, to be able to take advantage of your human right of education, and a quality one of that. An education that will feed and start and grow your passion.
We endeavor to equip our students here with critical skills that they will need to be well-rounded and to find success in their own lives, whatever that may look like for them. In particular, we are focused on developing literacy in their native language, Spanish, English language skills, proficiency in technology, vocational and technical skills, and leadership and life skills. We have built an extraordinary team of educators who've developed an incredibly innovative and forward-thinking curriculum here that is all about sustainability. This curriculum is rooted in the UNESCO Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD model, which makes direct connections to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, not just in an academic sense.
The idea is that they're not coming here to memorize, they're not coming here to produce scores, they're coming here to become global citizens that are not afraid to design, to innovate, to ideate.
As teachers, we usually only focus on the academic area, but in this school, we'll be working more in emotional intelligence too. So this is really exciting for me. This is a great opportunity for me as a teacher.
I think all kids in the world deserve an education like at Vera Angelita, but we have to start somewhere. Vera Angelita is the first of many things that can actually create change.
Nicaragua needs to invest in high-quality education. Education is by far the best and most important asset a society and a country has to move forward.
It's a proven fact that education of girls is paramount to the strength and well-being of any country. And the simple truth that women and girls have in many situations been ignored and mistreated. If you want generational changes, changes that stop poverty and help the planet, educating women is the smartest and most important thing we can do.
When you believe in a girl, when you give her the education she deserves, you're opening a door of opportunities. You're unlocking so much potential. You're giving a path to new dreams that not only change her life, but of everyone around her.
Great. So I hope that was helpful and at least helps you to visualize now what I'm talking about. So I'll just kind of briefly explain the project a little bit more. So Vera Angelita is the name of the school, but it's also the name of this campus that we have. It's 437 acres, so it's quite a large property. It's located in the northern part of Nicaragua in a community called San Ramon, just outside the city of Matagalpa. It is a coffee growing region. That is basically the main industry. The closest city is a pretty minor city. So it's definitely not a very developed area. It's about 2.5 hours north of the capital. You would have seen all of this in the video, but just to reiterate, we put a lot of thought and effort into the actual design of the buildings in wanting to minimize our ecological footprint and to create systems that were sustainable. And the idea is that we would be able to sustain the community that we are bringing on site to be a part of this endeavor. And education, or the school, is really the anchor, but the project itself is much wider than that. And as an organization, Visions, has always focused on service and service learning. And we've done a lot of exchanges over the years, starting in Sri Lanka, but we've done projects in all the other countries as well, and bringing volunteers regularly. And that's been really, I think, a wonderful program, because it creates exposure to the communities we're working with. And it creates those kind of cross-cultural connections, and a lot of strong bonds have been formed. And so it's been definitely mutually beneficial. So the first thing I wanted to say is that what we're calling the Vera Angelita model, or the Vera Angelita model, is that it's a model. It's something that we want to be replicated. This project is in Nicaragua. We chose Nicaragua because it's the second poorest country, or at least it was when we started, in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti is the only one that had lower development indicators than Nicaragua at the time. And particularly in education, Nicaragua is performing at a much lower level than a lot of even their neighbors are. And so we wanted to go in and do this project for a community that really needed it. But this concept could be replicated anywhere in the world, and that is our hope. I mean, we really dream of having a network of schools like this, projects like this throughout the world. And I don't think anything would make me or I happier than to be able to do a project like this in Sri Lanka. So just to start, when we're talking about sustainability, just to understand what it is we mean. So this is the definition of sustainability. There's two kind of definitions. So the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level, or avoidance of the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. So we would understand sustainability to mean both of these things. I think when you say sustainability, a lot of people, their minds automatically go to the environment. And certainly that is important, and that's part of what we're talking about. But when we say sustainability, we mean it in the holistic sense, in a way that relates to these 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are just some ways that we have tried to create a project that is truly sustainable. So we mentioned the design. We're on track to hopefully become the second ever LEED certified project in Nicaragua. LEED is Leadership in Energy Efficiency Design. And this would be the first LEED certified school in the country. On an environmental restoration level, we have put a lot of effort into restoring the forests and the watershed around us. We're in the process of establishing an official private nature reserve, which would be the first in the country affiliated with a school. And we have an ongoing project to protect and document and hopefully help to contribute to the biodiversity of the property itself. We have plans to establish a center for the 5 R's that we're saying, which would be research, rescue, rehabilitation, reproduction, and release, with a focus on endemic species and endangered endemic species. That's a future project that's not yet underway. On an economic level, this project has created more than 600 jobs. We have over 150 full-time staff now. And these are people who, again, most of them are, their experience has been picking coffee. And now they're doing all sorts of jobs in different industries. And we want to just keep diversifying the industry of this project so that we can have a larger economic impact on the community. We've prioritized women leadership and empowerment. So most of our staff on this project, including on a service level, like our security guards, all the way from the managers to the security guards, we've focused on hiring women and on empowering them to take ownership over this project. As we we'll hopefully be bringing down lots of service groups. We'll be engaging the communities around us with projects in education, agriculture, health. I mean, you name it, we want to do it. We've already started a little bit with education and some health, but hopefully we'll be able to do a lot more. We've been doing scientific research on the area. We've had birding experts, insect experts, bee experts, reforestry experts, people who are coming and doing studies, education experts, people who are coming and studying what we have and are using that to share their research with their communities. And then on a financial level, this project is meant to be self-sustaining. So we have built, from the beginning, we built in income generating schemes to be able to sustain the operations of the school. We also right now have an ongoing fundraising campaign to establish an endowment that, regardless of our fundraising efforts, would secure the financial sustainability of the project in perpetuity. Our campus itself is meant to be sustainable. So that means food production. We aim to be 90% self-sufficient. There's some things we're just, not going to be growing, but we're 100% organic. We don't use any chemicals at all. We promote only a vegetarian and vegan diet. And our agriculture systems mimic nature rather than go against it. And so that means agroforestry systems, which go hand in hand with our reforestry efforts. On an energy level, the aim is to be 100% self-sufficient using solar. Water, thankfully, we have a lot of water in this area naturally. It is a cloud forest, but climate change is quickly changing the landscape here. And so we've really prioritized restoring the watershed and reforesting the land so that we can ensure we have that water intake forever. And then finally, with waste management, so far we've been about 90% self-sufficient in managing our own waste. That which isn't managed, we have an agreement with the local government and some NGOs actually that reuse waste for different projects and products that they create. But otherwise, all of our gray and black water, our solid waste, our animal waste, everything gets reused on site. Just a few pictures of what the farm looks like. We have our food production systems, our animal systems, our reforestry systems, agroforestry, which is really fruit trees is the focus there. Yeah, we have a lot of projects in the works. Certainly we want to do more in conservation. And I think that's something that will help to draw a lot of visitors to us. That is all planned for 2022. So about the school itself, so everything I've talked about so far has been kind of about the projects at the campus, but the school itself is going to be grades 5 to 12. It's a boarding school. We are planning to open in just a few months in February with grades 5 to 8 only, 20 girls per grade. So we'll start with 80 students. And these are all girls who come from all over the country. And our staff have really tried to go out and penetrate as far into the, kind of untouched rural areas as possible. So some of these girls, you have to travel as far as 8 hours inland, often, by boat, by foot, to reach them, which is really why we need to have a residential school format, which allows for a lot more learning opportunities and also enables us to provide them with, a safe environment in which to learn. Students are going to receive their housing, their meals, their clothing, medical care, counseling, transportation, everything is included. It is free. The expectation is that the parents will certainly be involved and they will come and hopefully volunteer and contribute in ways that they are able, but we're not charging any sort of fee for them to attend. We're only focused on the national diploma because we have to be operational for a few years before we seek an international diploma. But the idea is that by the time our girls graduate, they're going to have both of those diplomas in hand, which will enable them to pursue opportunities domestically and abroad. Our curriculum, this is, for me, has been the most exciting part because we get to focus on all the things that we as adults now know that we never learned, that we should have learned, or that we want to have learned. And that was really the starting point for us in designing this curriculum. So it's a very practical curriculum. We know we live in the world we live in, and we have to follow, of course, traditional academics. We know they need to have these diplomas and be able to perform on certain tests in order to move on, but we want them to develop a lot more than that. And that means life skills, vocational technical skills, leadership, service, technology, language, agriculture, anything that helps develop them as a person, as a whole. As I mentioned, we really want the parents and families to be engaged as much as possible, and we've got a lot of ways that we're planning to do that. And just about student selection criteria, we're looking for students that were from economically challenged or vulnerable backgrounds. Obviously, that is a requirement. The other requirement, we're not looking at academic indicators at all. All of these students are performing well below grade level. A lot of them have some serious work to do in catching up. But we're looking mostly for students who have that drive, that want to learn, that want to do something with their lives. That's a student I think you can have the biggest impact with, and there's no shortage of them. And then having foundational literacy skills and I spelled this wrong here, but Spanish skills. We do have some students coming from indigenous communities who speak other languages, which is wonderful, and we want to have linguistic diversity, but they also have to have functional Spanish skills, because that will be the initial language of instruction before we transition to a bilingual Spanish-English education. I think I'll skip over this. Just some photos from our student selection process, and you can see on the left here, these are the types of areas that our staff have been going to find these girls. And the school itself is the entire campus. It's not just the school buildings. It's 437 acres currently of this beautiful cloud forest, but hopefully we'll keep adding land to this and building up that private reserve. But the learning opportunities are really endless. Just some photos of the school. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the curriculum itself. So our curriculum is modeled after the UNESCO Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD model. And ESD is in direct response to the Sustainable Development Goal number 4 of quality education. And ESD is basically teaching about sustainability for addressing sustainability issues. And again, that sustainability means the holistic concept, social, economic, environmental, and so forth. And this is really how we see being able to accomplish the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So what this means is that we are teaching traditional subjects, of course, but we're not teaching them in isolation from other subjects, and we're not teaching them in isolation from the real world context in which we all live. So when we teach about math, for example, let's say the concept we're trying to impart this week is volume. So as we're teaching about volume, maybe we're doing it through the lens of water. So we're teaching math concepts through this idea of water, while you're also at the same time in your history class learning about the importance of water in your community. And then you're learning about the economy of water and the cost of water. And then you're learning, so that everything is connected and mutually reinforcing. So at the end of every quarter, rather than having kind of traditional evaluation methods, what we're planning to do is we have a Vera week, is what we're calling it, where students can demonstrate through projects, through speeches, through whatever they want to come up with, creative ways in which they can show us what they have learned, and they're doing it through a theme. And each theme ties back to one of these UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then this is just a few months ago, there was a meeting in Berlin in which ministers and vice ministers from over 80 countries and more than 2,000 representatives from stakeholders in the education sector internationally signed on to this ESD commitment, which was that by 2025, they would transform their education systems. So there are entire countries like Germany, like Costa Rica, who have committed to reshaping what their educational national curriculum looks like and doing it in a way that is rooted in ESD principles. And they're doing it because it is the reality. It's a response to the reality of our world, but it's also a way for them, I think, economically to be, at the forefront of where our global economy is headed. So I think this is really exciting for me as someone who's in the education space, and who's been in the international development space, because it's so practical. And I'm really excited to see, what these countries come up with. And I'm excited for us to be a part of that and to hopefully be able to create a network of schools that follow these ESD principles, and to create a kind of global community, a global network in which we can share all of our work. And also I should mention that our curriculum is going to be completely open source. So our curriculum will be posted on our website eventually. And right now we've had this teacher training program going on for almost a year. And our teachers are, just as they create lesson plans, focus on grades 5 to 8, all subjects right now. All of that will be archived and be made openly available to anyone as well. So I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for letting me share a little bit more about our school and this project with you.